Hello and welcome along to It's a Beer Right in the 90s and the Most Millennial Podcast, the collaborative podcast that's never a trick, but always a treat. I'm Stu Joslin, and joining me is Alex Greenwood. And for this episode, our co-hosts, Drew, Reed and Sean. Yep, you heard that correctly. There are 2 podcasts and 5 presenters this time because we're doing our first ever collaborative episode with our friends across the pond, the Most Millennial Podcast. Guys, how are you?
Doing awesome.
Living that dream. And why don't we introduce ourselves too?
Oh yeah, I want to do it too. I'm Drew.
And I'm Reed.
I'm good. And I'm jeez. And I'm Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Hell yeah, you are.
I like to Reed. That was good.
I'm really looking forward to this one. We've been talking to these guys in Most Millennial Podcast for a while now, trying to work out how we can collaborate. We're big fans of their show, and so yeah, we were trying to think of a topic that would work and make sense for us to collaborate on. And due to the time of year and the fact that Halloween is a bit of a kind of quite an American festival, we thought, well, that would be perfect. So that's what we're doing, and I would say we haven't got the guys in the studio, have we, Stu? It's not quite worked out like that.
No, that's right. No, obviously, if we were all going to be on the call together at the same time, somebody would have to be up at about 3 a.m, and I don't think anybody likes podcasting that much.
No, we like it, but we don't like it that much. So yes, we've had to pre-record each other's sections, so we'll then stick them together in post-production and hope that it flows smoothly and sounds reasonable. But
nobody will notice a difference. If we hadn't said this, then nobody would notice a difference at all.
No. But this is the first time that Wessex and Colorado have collaborated on a podcast, as far as I know. So yeah. So guys, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Most Millennial Podcast?
So with the Most Millennial Podcast, we look at all things that are mostly millennial for our mostly millennial audience. And so we focus a lot on 90s and 2000s and honestly a lot of current events too, and the things that are affecting millennials as they age as well. But we have a strong dose of nostalgia. Would you guys add anything into that?
Yeah, we wildly speculate.
I think that's
time,
kind of our
that's
tagline.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're speculators.
The Most Millennial Podcast, we wildly speculate.
Yes.
As always, we have a sponsor for this episode, and our sponsor this week is Aladdin's Cave of Caution, your independent toy shop for all of your Halloween needs. You can simply quote the code ALLRIGHT90s at the counter to reduce 10% off of fake blood, sticky eyeballs, and horrible hairy spiders, right up until Halloween itself. So that's Aladdin's Cave of Caution. Go and get yourself stocked up on your Halloween bits and bobs. Thanks to the guys there for sorting us out with that.
Yeah, spot on. Great shop. I've not been in there for a while, but yeah, I mean, with that offer, I might well get down there and get myself some fake blood because 'tis the time of year.
Superb. They used to do football kits for like action men as well. So I remember having a blue kit for one of my action men, which was very good. So
Nice.
yeah. Hopefully they've
Nice.
still got some Norwich aways in stock for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll get down and have a look. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, let's get on with our regular feature. What's the most 90s? And we have got a Halloween theme this time. I'm going to ask you guys, what is the most 90s Halloween sweet / candy? We've got to, be bilingual on this collaborative
course,
podcast. So, let's start with you, Stu.
Well, I've gone hard boiled. I've actually gone mainly with a sweet. It's not around anymore. It was a relatively short-lived thing. But do you remember the Campino? So it was a sort of hard-boiled strawberry and cream type sweet, and then they also did like a peaches and cream version as well. But the reason that whenever I think of Halloween sweets, I think of Campino, is that it's aligned with a particularly distressing moment in my life. Where, well, I didn't realize it was distressing at the time, but now I think about it, it was extremely distressing. I opened the front door once to some trick-or-treaters in the late 90s, and my parents had got in Campinos for that evening to give out. And I went and answered the door to these trick or treaters, and one of the lads had the grey Man United sharp view cam away strip, the famous one where they changed it at half time against Southampton.
Yeah.
And he'd torn it, ripped it, put fake blood all over it.
Oh, no.
Just completely used it for a costume and to make it look like he had like a chest burster.
Yeah.
And now I think that shirt would be worth hundreds of pounds. And all for a couple of Campinos.
Not worth it.
Obviously, you think about your big hitters, your Haribos, your brands like that. But it's Campino for me. That's just for that one memory, and also I'd like to give Campino a mention because I don't think anybody has mentioned them since about 2002.
I think I once prematurely swallowed a Campino and had a slightly dramatic moment of semi-choking. I hadn't thought of it until you said the name, but that's just come back to me. So
Campino is linked to distressing moments in both of our lives.
That's true, yeah. Perfect for Halloween, you're right.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah.
Very scary, sweet, obviously.
Yeah. Let's go to you guys next. Most Millennial Podcast. What do you think is the most 90s Halloween candy?
I think late 90s for us and early 90s, like the Push Pops. Was that 2000s maybe? Push Pops are fun.
We're 90s, yeah. Like Ring Pops,
Push
Pops.
The Ring Pops for sure. I remember Ring Pops were the shit.
Yeah.
Anything that you can put on your fingers or just like...
There's always a gimmick,
lick.
The necklaces. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, candy necklaces.
Yeah.
That's the most 90s candy for sure. I think
the necklace wasn't sweet though. The necklace was just chalk and bitter as hell.
It tasted like antacid.
Yeah.
That's what you had after lunch because I got the indigestion.
It turned into Tums. Yeah, exactly.
Now, Sean and Drew, I think that we can all agree that the worst, but maybe the most quintessential 90s Halloween candy was candy corn.
It's the same. It was corn they've always had since I think Halloween was invented.
Yeah, I'd say it was there. It was present in Halloween and my childhood.
Yes, every single 90s Halloween had to have candy corn, or
it's not good. It's not flavored. It's just wax. It's weird. I don't know why it's a thing, honestly.
Let's turn sugar into something that kids are gonna hate.
It's terrible. The only one that really sticks out in my mind, it's not sweet, but it was Airheads. Like you get the individually packed Airheads that were super sour, and for me and my friends, it was always who could have the most in their mouth.
that was always a weird game to play with. No,
something I would always like to watch, but I never wanted to participate.
I have to say though, listening to Alex and Stu, listening to you guys, the candies that you reference, I have no frame of reference for, so I'm hoping that maybe this is the same thing for you guys as far as Airheads or some of the things that we're saying. Maybe it's something new that you can find somewhere and try out a little taste of our childhood.
Alex, round this off for us. What's your most 90s Halloween sweet?
Well, I was thinking, I think nowadays there's probably lots of specifically Halloween themed sweets, like, I don't know, novelty Haribo and orange and ghost sort of shaped stuff. But I think back in the day, I'm not sure if there was. And I was considering those individually foil wrapped balls. They were. I bet there were some pumpkin ones of them, but often footballs. That sort of thing that you would get, chucked in a trick or treat bucket. But what I've gone for is the little boxes of Smarties, the little cardboard boxes of Smarties.
Oh yes, yeah.
Because
fun size.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were basically made for this sort of thing. This and party bags is what those boxes of Smarties were made for. They're sort of hygienic. You can chuck them around. You can share them out. It's a decent sized amount for one person or one child. And I just think they make me think of the 90s and childhood. You could also maybe say if it was a healthier household, it might be a box of sun-made raisins in those little red boxes. But then that's not technically a sweet, so can't have that. So that was my choice, really. Yeah, those little boxes of Smarties. Perfect for any trick-or-treater who's come to your door this year.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that the fun size area of things is definitely always explored around this time of year, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there'll be plenty of fun size Smarties boxes flying off the shelf. So yeah, get yourself down and get yourself sorted out. Do they still? Do you know on the tubes of Smarties? Do they still print a letter of the alphabet on the inside of the can?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know. It's been so long since I've had one, but I don't know. No, I don't know what that was all about. Was that just did they spell out Smarties, didn't they?
I'm not sure. I think you've got other letters. I think.
Did you? Oh, right.
I don't know. I have to listen. Somebody write in if you know, please, because I can't be bothered to look it up. So yeah. Can
I just ask? Is there any phrase more associated with inverted commas than fun-sized? Fun-sized, it's never fun. I mean, it's just small. It's just smaller and less fun. But
yeah.
I think everyone knows what it means. Yeah. It's like a code, really, isn't it? Code for parents, really.
I certainly have more fun eating a full-size Mars bar than I do eating a fun-size Mars bar. But
yeah, exactly. Oh well, there you go. It's classic marketing scam. We don't fall for it.
It's a misnomer on every conceivable level.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it then. Let's get into the bulk of the episode, which is, of course, Halloween in the 90s. And the first question I'm going to ask for us all to answer is, how important do you think Halloween is in your respective countries? So we'll start with Most Millennial Podcast. How do you guys think Halloween is in the States in terms of importance?
I feel like it, and maybe just because of the age, I feel like it was more of a thing when I was younger. I feel like it's dwindled a lot in the States recently.
It's because you're older, Drew. It's not for you anymore.
But even then, like even as an adult, I don't think I'm answering the door. I mean, there's a lot of kids in my neighborhood. We're in a new kind of development.
Do you think that's COVID at all?
I don't know. I'm not answering the door as frequently as I feel like I did, or even my parents did back when we were kids.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have no way to or nothing to point at as far as a reason goes.
I feel like I'm kind of the opposite. Like Halloween is more important to me now that I have kids than it was to me as a kid. And I think part of that was like living out in the boonies.
Yeah.
You
what was your Halloween like out in the boonies? Because you lived literally on a mountain. So did you just go to your aunt and uncle's house and then like back and forth to your parents and your uncle's house?
No, here's the sad thing. Like we had here's the sad thing. We had kind of like a religious smugness about it. Like, oh, you worship Satan? Well, we don't. And so we would have movie nights every Halloween. And like if anybody knocked on the door, it's like, shut the lights off, pretend we're not home.
Yeah.
Like there was a fear that there was going to be trick-or-treaters, which is like strange.
Dude, if someone showed up at your house on Halloween, I would genuinely be afraid because your house, or your parents' house rather, in the middle of the night on top of a mountain is actively terrifying.
Yeah, no, there's spooky bears, and if there was a dude knocking on the door, you're like, that guy's...
Well, and it's the fox, too. Like, you've got the fox den next to your parents' house, all like...
Yes.
Ah! Ah! Like,
oh, it's a horrible sound.
Like, fox are terrible.
Yeah.
So, during Halloween... yes, Halloween is a big deal.
I never really thought about your Halloween read.
Yeah, no.
It was a big deal for my family. My sister and I dressed up all the time. It was a big deal as far as what we planned on. Mom would, make like all of our costumes. And then we lived in a cul-de-sac, and there were a bunch of relatively same-aged kids just like all around the cul-de-sac. So it was like a massive thing. And then just, I guess, comparing that to now, even as an adult, I think I answered the door last year like maybe 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I think that as a parent, I'm really enjoying Halloween with the kids because it's something like I didn't get to indulge in. And I was very jealous as a kid as far as like my best friend growing up would have a pillowcase full of candy, the coolest costume. He would be able to yes, he had to take his candy to the police station to be x-rayed.
Which is bullshit, by the way. There's never anything in that candy. Continue.
Yeah, and always the fear, like, no, somebody's putting drugs in the candy. Drugs are expensive. They're
Someone's
not just giving
away
their
drugs.
Yeah.
Someone dropped their drugs in my pillowcase by accident. Should I take it back to him?
This was like the spooky, scary side of Halloween that our family kind of bought into. And
that was definitely for the 90s too, where you would hear a thing from your neighbors, or like something with the rumor mill, was just circulating, and so you had no way to check it, or no easy way to check it, and so that rumor would spiral out of control.
Going back to the original question a little bit, how important is Halloween in the United States? I think for young kids, super important. I think for college kids, it's totally a thing.
It's
especially living in a college
holiday.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Living in a college town, like, that is the craziest night of the year is Halloween, it feels like.
Okay then, Stu. What about over here on this side of the pond? Do you think how important do you think Halloween is over here in the UK?
I don't think it's as big a deal in the UK as it is in the US. There's a lot of culturally iconic things to do with Halloween from the US. The best Halloween movies, the best Halloween music, Halloween TV specials, etc., etc. And you don't seem to get that level of engagement in the UK. Obviously you get, kids will go out and trick or treat, and there will be costumes, and the shops will sell, Halloween things to do at the front of your house, etc. But no, I don't think it's. I don't think it is, unfortunately, because I do love a good Halloween. I don't think it is as. I don't think people get as involved in it over here as they do in the US. And I say, I think it's a shame.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is still seen as a bit more of an American thing. And I think you sometimes hear, maybe more so from older people moaning that it's like, oh, it's just an American thing, and it's come over here, and it's sort of, it's commercialized and all that sort of stuff. But I think maybe it's becoming a bit more popular over here. And I mean, I totally hope it does, because like you, I really like Halloween. I think it's a sort of, I've grown to like it much more over recent years. And here comes my brother with his first mention of the pod. He is very much into it, and I think maybe some of that's rubbed off on me. But I think it's a good time of year to have some sort of celebration, because we don't have anything in the autumn really here. Obviously in America, you guys have got we've got Thanksgiving, which is massive. I think maybe almost as big as Christmas, or bigger than Christmas. Whereas we don't have anything like that, apart from Harvest Festival, of course, which all that really precipitates is bringing in a can of beans to your school hall for an assembly. But I
got a great Harvest Festival story if you want it, but it's going off topic.
Well, I don't think we're going to do an episode on Harvest Festival, so you might have to use it now.
Well, it's very short, but in about 1997 or 8, my mum sent me into school with a can of soup for Harvest Festival, which had a best before date of 1993. And I'm sure it would have been rejected at the quality control stage, but that's always. I think it was one of these things where I'd sort of mentioned it like 5 minutes before I was due to go out of the house, and there wasn't anything else. It must have been. I don't think my mum would have done that deliberately.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. That's Harvest Festival.
That can of soup or whatever it was very much a being stored for the event of some great disaster, wasn't it? Now your mum probably thought the Cold War's over now. The threat of nuclear destruction is reduced, so we can finally get rid of it. So she was probably glad to. It was
definitely definitely in the nuclear winter section of the cupboard, along with the beans and sausages and things like that. The stuff that for a time of great need. But anyway, sorry, I digress.
But yeah, I think we could really benefit from making more of it and having. Well, actually, I heard this. Let's see what you think of this. I heard on Adrian Chiles. This was on Radio 5. I do love Adrian Chiles, and he was having.
Just for our American listeners, can you describe who Adrian Chiles is?
Adrian Chiles is he's just a radio presenter. He's been on the TV as well. He's just an affable, knowledgeable, often sort of quite political. Well, he does political sort of shows, and he's a West Brom fan. But now I've got to explain who West Brom are. I shouldn't have said that. Forget it. He's just he's a good radio presenter, and I like him.
And Drew Reed and Sean, if you can let us know who the US equivalent is of Adrian Chiles from that description, I'd be very interested to know. Thank you.
Yeah. And who's the US equivalent of West Brom? It's probably someone like Pittsburgh
Cleveland
Pirates
Browns,
or something.
something like that.
Cleveland Browns, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, he suggested they were talking. This was a few months ago about bank holidays, and I think there was talk about the fact that we have so many bunched together at the beginning of summer, and maybe we should spread them out a bit. And he suggested maybe Halloween would be a good place for one, and I am totally on board with that. And if Adrian, if you're listening, if you want to start a campaign on social media or beyond, I will fully back you on that, because I think a Halloween bank holiday would be brilliant. We really do need something to take the edge off the fact that summer is over and the weather's getting cold. I think it'd be genuinely, the more I think about it, the nicer I think it would be to have a bank holiday in autumn where people go out for walks and in the leaves and and all the Halloween stuff as well. Yeah, I think we should do it.
This isn't the first time that Charles has been bang on the money.
No, it's not, and it will definitely not be the last time either. But yeah, I think a difference between the UK and the US is that we're not so big on tricks in this country. People go trick-or-treating, kids do it every year, but it's very much a treat-focused trick-or-treat session, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of tricks. Like, for example, I've never seen a tree be TP'd or toilet papered. No. I've never seen that. I've just never seen any like egging or broken windows or shattered bones or anything like that. And I think that might be a difference.
Well, I was saving this for later, but I'll tell you now because it fits in. The only thing I can ever remember like this happening to my family was my dad's, the Mark III Cavalier, having some spaghetti thrown at it while we were driving down our street.
Oh dear!
On the way back from a Halloween thing, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But it was it wasn't like dry spaghetti. It was the spaghetti like in a tin.
Yeah.
And some kids presumably on their way up from the park. They were dressed up, but they threw a bunch of wet spaghetti at the Cavalier. Were they dressed up as mafioso or something? I reckon. I don't think so. No.
One day we'll do a collaborative podcast with an Italian podcast, and they'll probably reveal that this is actually something they do in Italy.
Yeah.
But yeah, remains to be seen.
Bellissimo in the, I don't know what the Italian is for 90s, but
yeah, it'll be Bellissimo in the 90s.
Yeah.
Great.
Alejandro Greenwood. That doesn't work. That's Spanish. We'll cut that out.
Well, for me, Halloweens were not that big in the 90s when I was growing up. They were fairly low key for me, and I don't know if this is going to come as a shock to anyone here, but I never went trick or treating, and I have never been trick or treating. So that was not on my radar when I was growing up, because we grew up in the sticks somewhat. We were a bit out of town. It would have been a good mile or two to get into town before we could start knocking on any doors. And no one knocked on our doors. If they did, it would have been absolutely terrifying in the middle of the night out in the countryside. But I think I can only really remember one Halloween with much sort of detail, and that was one where me and my brother dressed up. I must have been, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9, something like that. I think we both dressed up as devils. I can remember. Actually, this memory comes mainly from photographs, and so it's a bit of a false memory, really. But we both dressed up as devils. And yeah, I don't know what else we did apart from that. We probably had like a nice meal and then some snacks and stuff. Maybe we watched a film. My dad made this sort of sword thing because he was sort of a bit of a carpenter. My dad, he sort of you tuck it into your trousers and up your shirt, and it would look like you'd been stabbed with a sword. So I remember that. He's wearing that in the photos. And yeah, and my mum would always make pumpkin pie, which is actually quite American. I mean, it is quite American, but for us it was very American. And yeah, my brother was like that, but I never had it. I've never liked the idea of pumpkin pie, and that stopped me even trying it, which is pathetic, really. But the idea of a vegetable-based sweet pie, I can't get on board with that. It's too incongruous. But actually did grow pumpkins one year in the back garden. Me and my mum grew some pumpkins, and they were so successful we took them into my primary school one day just to show them off because they were so spectacular. So that was a moment of great Halloween pride for me. But yeah, apart from that, it was not a big thing for me. No, I would hear about trick or treating from friends, but never did it myself. What about you, Stu?
Well, that makes two of us because I have never been trick or treating either. Which again is further proof that we are perfectly matched to host this podcast together. I did go to town on one Halloween, and I think I've told the story on the pod before, but it was probably a long time ago, and it's obviously very relevant now, so I'll tell it again. But where my parents lived and still live is about 3 minutes walk from a petrol station, which was Texaco. It still is Texaco. And this must have been, I think I'm fairly confident in pinning it on at 97. They held a Halloween dressing up contest for the local kids in the car wash. Now, the stuff wasn't going at the time. The brushes and the wax and all that wasn't, it wasn't all going at the time. But they shut down the car wash with it. And to this day, I don't know why they did it or what they thought, But I decided I wanted to do this, and I got all the kit to be a vampire. So I got a cape and some fake blood, and I had some smart trousers on and a white shirt, and I had a mask as well. And then there were a load of kids there that I knew, and I was saying hello to them, but nobody knew who I was because I had the mask on, and I couldn't figure out that people couldn't recognize me because of the mask, and I was getting a bit frustrated, but then I realized. And I remember it might have been a kid in my year called Aaron Cleverly, I think, but I remember somebody being there, and I think it was him, just being wrapped from head to toe in tinfoil. So he was like a sort of Martian or a spaceman, so obviously there was an opening for his face. I mean, they weren't stupid. Yeah. But it was just totally wrapped, and it was like all formed around his, like, which I remember thinking was pretty cool. Yeah. And tried to recreate on one occasion when I was about 16 and had access to some an industrial roll of tinfoil, but it didn't work out as well. And on the way home from that was when the spaghetti incident occurred. But then I swung from enjoying it like that. I then swung the other way because I think that there had been a spate of or as you say, it didn't really happen, but I must have got it in my head that older kids were going to try and do something to our house, because I remember insisting one year that we were all in, but I remember insisting on pretending that we were out. So we had all the lights off, all the curtains were drawn, everything, and we were sort of watching TV, and I don't know why my parents put up with it, but we were watching TV in the lounge, but with everything sort of to say that we were out so that nobody would knock on the door. And I remember being stopped from putting some signs on the front door which said something like, "If you don't move away from the front door within 5 seconds, the roof-mounted machine guns will start," or something like that. I don't know why. I was just so. Now, of course, I realise that for most of my life, I've suffered from some form of anxiety, but that was the way it went. So yeah, that's my memory of Halloween in the 90s. I went all out on one, and then really didn't participate again. So yeah, a bit of a strange one. And if I can just stray into the 2000s briefly. The last Halloween party I can remember going to was in about 2006. It was a house party. I went in my normal clothes, but I drew a scar on my forehead in lipstick, and I had a broomstick, and I said that I was Harry Potter on a stag do.
Very nice. Very nice.
There you have it.
Yeah, there wasn't much. Nothing happened at school, did it, or anything like that? I don't remember there ever. Certainly not a primary school. I don't think anything. You wouldn't go in and all be, made up or decorations or anything. It was just very much, just do it at home. This is not really a big thing. Yeah, it's such a shame. I love a Halloween party. It's my favorite thing now, and over the last 10 or 15 years, it's my favorite sort of house party. It's definitely a Halloween party, I think. Yeah, I can't think of anything I really dressed up in the 90s, which is a shame, but there you go.
Well, we're really well placed to present this episode, aren't we? As it turns out. Well, those are our own mildly disappointing recollections of Halloween in the 90s. So hopefully, Drew Reed and Sean, you've got something a little bit better.
So as kind of the elder millennial, I grew up, I graduated high school in 2000. So yeah, all of my trick-or-treating was kind of in the 90s. And some of the fear stuff that we've kind of touched on was definitely present, but man, my parents didn't care about that shit. They just said, fill up your sack. No. Yeah, I always had a pillowcase full of candy. I was always one of those kids. But then my candy would just sit in a punch bowl in my like downstairs closet for a year. And my sister and I would just pick at that bowl periodically throughout the year. But it was always a fun time. We always had a blast. Like all of the sensationalized fear aspect that our media would put out there never really applied, or if it did, it just existed in those stories for me.
Yeah.
I never knew anyone who got the razor blades, the poison, the drugs, the anything. Like about the only things that would happen would be toilet papered houses, smashed pumpkins, and the occasional hypothermia. No big deal.
That's one thing that our friends from across the pond mentioned just briefly, was that they didn't see a lot of tricks or TP trees or anything. I feel like later in the 90s, I was kind of the like TP prankster sort of thing. Never on Halloween, but always, throughout life. Yeah, I think we put 80 rolls of toilet paper in one of our friends' tree. That was just...
Good Lord.
I know. I was a bad kid. I feel like I owe you an apology.
Hey, COVID's going to be something. We're going to need that toilet paper.
My sister and I growing up in the 90s, we went hard on Halloween, but it was for us, I don't think it was ever really about the candy. I mean, that was definitely a nice perk for me and her. It was always about how cool our costumes were. For us, it was just an excuse to dress up and go all out for whatever pop culture reference we wanted to do. And then luckily enough, our mom was just super avid about like helping out with the costumes. So I always remember just like literally telling her in September, this is what I want to do. And then she, just would like pull out all the stops and try to make our costumes as badass as she possibly could. That's what I remember. And the
do you remember?
What's that?
I was gonna say, do you remember any of the costumes that you picked out, or any ones in particular?
It's not 90s, but I remember my mom threw together. I was still pretty young. A pretty badass Jack Sparrow costume.
Nice.
Like I was pumped about this. I felt like I was the shit in that thing.
I think I've seen pictures.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it now, it's not great, but like at the time, at that age, however old I was, it was rad. And then if I'm pulling out specifically the 90s, it wasn't made. It was, I think, store bought. Excuse me, but my sister and I went as the Red and the Pink Ranger.
Oh, yeah.
One year.
Yeah.
Don't they have like a love tryst in Power Rangers? Is that
probably? We probably chose wrong in hindsight. But I remember like getting specifically the belt and having the belt that I think was at the time the talisman of whatever the power was. I remember that being like the coolest thing that
wasn't
you could possibly
Red T-Rex?
Yeah. And so that, and then I think Tara, she was pink, so she was the pterodactyl, I want to say.
Yeah.
Just fitting. Her name's Tara. And for whatever reason, it was like the belt. The belt was like my prize. The helmet was like one of those crappy half plastic helmets that didn't do much. But I remember feeling so cool in that one. And then the best way to describe what trick-or-treating was like for me in the 90s was, if you remember the scene in E.T. during the Halloween, where he's just going out, and like the amount of kids on the street, like that was what we experienced. Just the streets just being littered with children and candy.
They're still alive, aren't they? Like it's
They're alive. They're walking around, but it was just like it was a scene, man. Like it was a party, at least on our block.
That's so awesome. Sean, do you remember any of your costumes or anything in particular?
Let's see. Gosh. Yeah, this wouldn't have been 90s. This would have been actually 80s. Ooh. There was this face paint that my mom got, but it was activated. It was like a carbonation or something in it with a makeup.
Whoa.
So you'd apply it, and then you put this other application on it, and it would start to bubble and fizz.
Whoa.
So almost like warts and like little scabs and things. And that was probably the coolest makeup ever, just because of the way it felt, but then the way it looked was just like, oh my God, that was really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. That sounds cool. But since it's from the 80s, it probably gave us all cancer or something.
Oh, for sure. Like that's why
all
my
those
skin,
people are dead.
Yeah, if you see my skin, that's why it's so horrible today, is because of that makeup.
The one-time use.
The one-time application. And then, yeah, like the news report the next day.
Sean, I hate to
November
say this,
1st.
your mom used acid. That is awesome. I missed out on this, but like I would still dress up on Halloween, even though we wouldn't go anywhere.
And just stand by the window.
Yeah, and be like, oh, if only, if only.
This year, I am...
God, that's sad.
That explains a lot, doesn't it?
This year, I'm going to be dressed as a boy that really wants to go trick-or-treating. Wink, wink.
And, oh, man, we played trick-or-treating. My sister and I would play trick-or-treating because there was no mountain kids to go trick-or-treating.
I did not know this about you. That's
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
This
man.
is-
There's no
this
other way
is
to
like
put
a
it.
whole nother
That
level.
sucks.
Well, Drew, I first went trick-or-treating with you. Do you remember this?
I remember this until you told me that it was your first time. I don't think even the day of, I don't think I knew it was your first time.
This was well
And-
after the 90s.
Well after
Embarrassing.
the 90s. This is after we've graduated high school. We're both in college. I didn't know
I
it
think
was
you,
your first time.
yeah.
I feel bad because it was your first time because I think we went to a house.
But
and
we
then
got a
came
king
back.
size.
We did get a king. Well, we went to that house
Hey,
because they gave out king
That's
size.
a great first experience, man.
But so that means, so if that was your first time, but pre-kids, that means you came over. We went to us. We dressed up. I was Batman, and you were a Bumblebee.
Robin.
No, a bumblebee. I wore his mom's bumblebee suit.
It was a big Bumblebee onesie.
We'll have to post it on Instagram.
You have to post it on the
again.
Instagram. It was like all we had that fit. We literally we walked down the cul-de-sac. We went to the house that I knew had the king size, and
You don't want to waste your time at the other
lady-
houses.
Yeah, the lady opened. So I'm in Batman, and I've got the cowl on, and so I have complete anonymity as far as who I am.
And you're a good
And-
deal smaller than me, which
much
is a
smaller.
part of the story that's important.
Yeah, and so we open, and so it's this lady that I know because again she's a neighbor, and she goes, oh, look, mom, I don't know how you say it, mom accent. Oh, look at you guys, aren't you guys adorable? And it goes, I'm Batman, and you
But
say,
you growled it out. I'm Batman.
yeah,
And I go, I'm a bee.
you did. You said I'm a bee, and she goes, I remember specifically. She goes, yes, you are. Gives us each a king size, and then
Okay.
you literally she closes the door. We walk down the driveway, and you literally go like, I think I'm done. I get it. And that was it. That was your trick or treating experience.
Wow, I kind of want you to interview your neighbor now.
Oh
Like
my
go
God.
back to that. I want to know what she was thinking about this man dressed as a giant bee that says, "And I'm a bee." And
was-
yes, you are.
It was so.
She was so
demeaning.
kind.
Yeah, it was so.
But that's the thing is like, what did she think? Like,
I mean-
what was going through her mind was like, well, do I do this?
Maybe
Reed's
he's not
face is
well.
like, yeah. Well, because it's like Reed, you just look like a college student that has the like hairband antennas on, and then just a oversized B onesie on, and you're just in jeans, and like so it's like it's minimal effort, no effort at all.
Oh,
And I-
come on.
I
That's
didn't even have a
effort. You had to put
mask
something
to
on.
hide
Yeah,
my
that's
shade.
what I'm saying. So I had the cowl. She didn't know that probably at the time that I was, or maybe she did and was just being polite. That's probably more so what she was. But it just you just saying that, and then either she was being polite or condescending. There's no way to know it. But you were just like, okay, I
Yeah.
get it.
That's
I'm
enough for
done.
me.
I'm
I've-
done here.
So we
I've
went straight back to my house and
trick-or-treated.
had pizza. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think at the time I knew that was your first time. Or
Really?
if you told me, I forgot.
Maybe I was too embarrassed to share that at that time.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think this just points out the fact that Halloween is for kids. Whether you
Yeah.
are a child or you're a parent living through your children, or the kind people who own the houses giving candy to strange children. I mean, it's for kids.
Yeah.
It's not for
Yeah.
first-time college kids dressing up in their friend's mom's bumblebee outfit.
Yeah.
Clearly.
As an adult and now a parent, I will state that I don't know if look down on is the best way to describe it, but
If I
the
showed
older
up in
kids
my
that come
bee
to the
suit,
door. Yeah.
If I showed up in my bee suit, you'd like just get out of here.
just
I
want to
see. I would give you
yeah.
candy. I would give you candy for the effort. If you just showed up as some guy,
If there's
I'd be like, "Come
effort
on."
into it, for sure, 100%. But if there's a kid that shows up in the colored T-shirt and you're just like, I'm a popsicle.
I'm a bee.
Yeah. Then no.
I'm Brad.
I
But-
bet you
Manette.
are.
You certainly are, Brad.
Back to the king size though. Like, why are fun size? I agree with Alex and Stu on this. Like, fun size is not fun. Like, the king size is fun.
Yeah, fun size is a ripoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it is. It's just more work. I'm gonna eat candy till I feel sick, and so I'm just opening those wrappers until
So
I put
wasteful.
a chunk. Yeah, exactly.
You see, yeah, fun size was invented by a bunch of boomers who didn't care about the environment, who didn't care that all of this plastic would be swarming in the ocean and just being filled up and nowhere to go. It's all because of the fun size. All of it.
That's-
Extra
Is it
plastic.
Is it part of the diet craze? Like, I don't know if that's even a thing really, but is it?
Oh, yeah. That's
is
kind
it
of a
trying
90s.
to be like, oh, here's portion, oh, you just want a little sugar, or you just want a portion of that Three Musketeers bar, right? I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't even know if that's a
I
thing.
want to eat it all.
Yeah.
I want the whole thing.
We've actually got some correspondence on this question of what Halloween was like in the 90s for us over here in the UK. This all came in on our Facebook, so it seems like a good time to read it out. So yeah, on Facebook, Susie Thorpe said, "Was anyone else only given bin bags to make their Halloween costumes?" That I think was probably true for a few people. I think, Stu, don't you have
Yeah.
someone who said the same thing?
Yeah, Emma Henley on Facebook says the costumes made from bin bags was something else. So bin bags were clearly a big raw material for Halloween costumes in
Yeah.
the 90s.
A classic sort of parents realizing last minute that it's Halloween and they
Mm-hmm.
need to do something for the costumes. So
Yeah.
probably.
Well, you can
true.
knock up a cape, can't you? I mean, you can use the ties for the bin bag to go around
Oh,
the neck, and then I
yeah.
mean, it just lends itself to it perfectly, doesn't it?
The very
So,
least. Yeah. Also on Facebook, friend of the pod, Nat Bennett, said, I dressed up as a witch for a Halloween party one year, and my mum tried to glue a sugar puff onto my face to act as a wart. All I remember about the party is either trying to keep the sugar puff wart on my face or trying to find it on the floor because it had fallen off for the 100th time. I think that sounds like a delicious wart.
What is it with parents and like we had wife of the pod, Beth's mum, using bleach on her brother's face a few episodes ago.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
now got parents gluing sugar puffs to their children's face. Where will it
Yeah.
end? Like, what?
Oh, I know.
This is something that I'm pretty glad was left behind in the 90s. It has to be said. The
Yeah.
you know, using hazardous materials on your children's skin. Don't do it.
Yeah. And then finally, friend of the pod, Hannah Kelly Fletcher, says, I remember having a Halloween party with friends. We did apple bobbing, which just washed off the carefully applied face paints. Then a trick-or-treater knocked at the door, and I answered it. This teenager asked me if I wanted to see the flower trick, and when I said yes, they threw a handful of flour in my face, which is not very nice. And it's not trick-or-treat either. That's just an abusive practical joke.
Yeah.
And it's not very nice. I feel for you there, Hannah. I think that's actually called antiquing. They do it a lot in Jackass. When you throw flour in someone's face, I guess because you suddenly look like you're an antique. But that's not nice.
I did that once to get out of a sticky situation. If you want the story,
please do.
It wasn't flour either, but
I feel like we should almost leave it there and it could be next time.
No, it's okay. It's okay. When I was in, I don't know, I was year 2 or 3, so I was 6 or 7, and there was like an old, like plastic Wendy house at Caution Primary, which had been donated obviously by somebody, and some bigger kids trapped me in it, and were holding the door shut. And the only window in this thing was like on the door. And after a little while of being in there, they were like looking in through the window at me. And there was like some dry like earth inside the Wendy house. So I picked up a handful of that, waited until he looked at me again, threw it in his face. He fell backwards, opened the door. I escaped. But then I got in trouble.
What? For that ingenious escape? That's exactly. You should be applauded.
I know, right?
It's genius.
But I was the one who got like James Topping and the sand. If you remember that one, that's another one where I had to take the blame, and it wasn't my fault.
I don't remember that. You might have to.
You don't remember that? I was holding a cup of sand in the classroom for some reason, and he came up behind me and jogged me, and it went everywhere, and then I got the blame for tipping the sand everywhere.
Everyone has their own examples of that sort of injustice at the hands of teachers, don't they?
Yeah.
It's like teachers. Oh, I don't want to badmouth teachers. It's a difficult profession, but
let's save that for the episode.
Education in the 90s.
And scars I haven't healed over
from the 90s.
From education in the 90s. Yeah, let's save it for that.
Good idea.
Okay, so what's happening with the second part of this episode, Al?
The second part of this episode is actually going to be on the Most Millennial Podcasts stream. It's going to be their deal, and we'll let them take the lead with that. And so to hear the rest of this, you are going to have to head over to their amazing channel, which is a good opportunity to listen to all their other episodes, which are also brilliant, and they're relatively new as well. So there's not a terrifying sort of backlog that you'll need to catch up on. You can happily listen to all they've got on there in a day or two, and would definitely recommend you do that. Guys, do you want to tell us where we can find your podcast, just so everyone knows where to look?
Oh yeah, Instagram.com. Mostly Millennial Pod.
No, it's the Most Millennial Podcast.
Oh, that's what
Who are we? What are we doing here?
I'm a bee.
Okay, you should plug because you know it.
Yeah, so where you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple, and all the major services. You can also check us out on Instagram at the Most Millennial Podcast. Actually, it's the Most Millennial Podcast. Our Twitter is the Most Millennial Pod. Let's take it again.
No, I like it.
Thank you very much, guys. Be sure to look out for the second half of this collaborative episode on the Most Millennial Podcast feed in a short while. But until we meet again, it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to go and do the flower trick on my wife.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm just off to TP the neighbour's tree.
Bye for now.
Bye.